Okay, for our first question of the evening, I'm going to start with Ms. Bakay. As the 2016 Mayor's Commission to Combat Poverty has documented, Lancaster is a city of haves and have-nots. Poverty is entrenched in much of the city's southeast and southwest neighborhoods, and the city's recent economic development has left behind thousands of city residents, especially people of color. You, Ms. Bakay, and the other 4 candidates here are campaigning on making Lancaster's economy fairer and more inclusive. How would you use your role on City Council to do that?
Thank you so much. This is an important question because it's something that I hear all the time as a resident of the Southwest and as I've been canvassing all over the city, including the Southeast. I think our neighborhoods are really hungry for more development to create the economic boom that we've seen downtown, but also to create jobs in those neighborhoods. As a member of City Council, one of the most powerful forces that we have to wield is our zoning. And for me, those decisions that we make should start with listening to the folks that live in neighborhoods. So when we make decisions about putting, for instance, light manufacturing in our neighborhoods, we can be listening to what folks want. What do they have to say about the parking in the neighborhood? How would that impact them? And how do they weigh the benefits of having those jobs there versus maybe creating issues with parking? But it all comes down to listening to folks and finding out what they want to have in their neighborhood more than letting someone else come in and tell them what they should be having.
All right. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Great. So I think this is a really important question, and I think at the heart of it, when you talk about the haves and the have-nots, what we really need to boil down is what do they have and what don't they have? Because while we might have an idea of what they're trying to achieve, until we listen, we don't really know how we can empower them, because we need to understand what the barriers are. And in that, what I've been noticing is that there is a gap, there's a barrier, which is language inclusivity. We see it in all parts of our community. In City Council at the moment, when I took my family for the first time, there wasn't Spanish interpreters available. So how are they to engage in the political process, to express themselves and express their needs in their community? And that happens throughout. So really, when we're going to the neighborhoods and listening and trying to empower strong neighborhoods to build our community, we need to start looking at the barriers that we see. And I think in understanding the languages that we need to provide, that's a really key point that we can really use to move forward.
Mr. Schell.
Well, as a starter, as a business owner, and operating and owning Shell's Disposal for over 40 years, and I've worked with all parts of the city, throughout the city. I've created more jobs in the Southeast area than any other development or business in the Southeast area. Also, and every day, someone come up to me asking me for jobs and how to get a job. One of the things that I would do is work as a councilman with the Stevens Trade and the other institutions within the area to try to bring jobs, especially when it comes down to training. That's one of the biggest things that are lacking in the Southeast area is training. When I had my recycling center, one of the things that I would do was train young men, and a lot of the people that are driving railroads as buses today because they came to me for work, and I was able to train them and send them to get better jobs.
Thank you. And Mr. Williams.
Oh my. This is like a question painted with a broad brush, but as being a city councilman, I look forward to bringing back the progressive format. Instead of trickle down, trickle up. Instead of the middle class just being forgotten about, I want to be the voice for the middle class, for the have-nots, for those that are struggling, for those that think that they don't have an opportunity. Right now, me being in this position, I'm living that dream. I'm living that vision. I started from nothing. I was 20 years ago. This would not even be heard of. But today, I have the opportunity to be in a Lancaster City Councilman.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Arroyo.
Yeah, this is a very important issue that I think Lancaster has been facing for the last couple of decades and will continue to face as we move forward. I have the opportunity of working in equitable development in my day-to-day job. And I think in order to create a more fair and equitable economy, we have to start shifting resources to the neighborhoods, and more specifically, I believe, small business owners within those neighborhoods. So we're starting to see a lot of bigger businesses, bigger corporations being attracted to Lancaster City. We need to make sure that we're giving access to resources to some of the smaller businesses. As a councilman, I think there's a lot of resources that the city currently has, such as a small business microloan program that goes largely untapped. I think we need to be more intentional about connecting that with small business owners, and mostly small business owners that are underrepresented, so that way they can have access to the same resources that some of the larger businesses have access to.
Okay, thank you. And this is a really important issue for the city, and more importantly for the folks who live in this city. And you've mentioned several things, zoning, you've looked about language impediments and employment and training and business incentives, education, shifting resources. So let's go around one more time. And I guess the two-part question I'd have is, be as specific as you can be where you may think the city could be doing something is lacking, and how you would make that happen on city council. And what kind of things, I assume you're out talking to folks, what are they telling you that they need you to do to help to remedy this situation? And I'll start again with you,
Sure.
Ms. Bakay.
Absolutely. I think that the number one thing that I'm hearing is jobs in general. Which unfortunately is sometimes a challenge of a member of city council. But I really appreciate some of the things that we've begun to do and would look forward to continue to do as a member of city council. So for instance, connecting folks with jobs that may not be in the city right now. Transportation is a huge barrier to employment and is one of the number one things that people talk about when they're talking about issues in terms of their own personal economies. So if we're not able to bring those businesses in with the other things that I've mentioned as far as zoning in neighborhoods, how do we get people to those jobs? That is one of the key things that I think that I would look to expand. So we're not just sending people out to places like Tyson that may not be paying very high, but how do we connect people with higher wage jobs, places that are paying above $12 an hour to $15 an hour? And then also, how do we connect people to jobs in the city and encourage them to pay a better living wage?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garcia Molino.
To me, I think with the specific people that I've been talking to during this election at the doors, and in any opportunity that I have, housing comes at the root of it. And for so many things, housing is at the root of everything, because if you don't have a shelter where you feel safe, then you can't go after these jobs. You can't go after the resources that we're talking about at the moment. So I think one of the things that becomes really important is the quality of the inspections and the ability for us to track the quality of our landlords. Because I used to be an early intervention support coordinator, and I had a family who was afraid to report their landlord for lead issues because they would be kicked out. So this family couldn't focus on the development of their child, they couldn't focus on the development of their jobs and employment and the resources they could tap into because the quality of the home wasn't there. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to start talking about is what can we do as a city to make sure that the quality of our landlords is up to par? What can we do to make sure that the access to resources is available to the families?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shell.
Would you state your question again, please?
Sure. We're looking at we jumped off from the Poverty Commission and what it had found with the disparities in the income levels in our city. And I had asked, we had gone around once, but I wanted to go around again and ask if there were some really specific kinds of things that you would want to initiate to help remedy this problem as a city councilman, and whether in talking to folks in the city, if they've given you some suggestions or ideas that you could take to council.
One of the things, what I would do is bring all the leaders of the community together and see what they would want to, what we could do as far as bringing jobs into the community, what would be their recommendation? One of the things that I hear all the time is about the zoning. It's too strict of zoning to start up businesses, especially in the southeast area. I've noticed, as I stated earlier, by me working throughout the city, there are other businesses can start up in certain part of the city, but when it comes down to the southeast area and the southwest, there are stricter rules. So I would bring about all the leaders together as well as the city code enforcers to see how can we reduce that so that we can bring more jobs into the southeast area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams.
Being an Afro-Latino and working as a contractor at the state level, and now from a Lancaster City Council perspective, I see that there's lack of opportunities for local contractors. I see a lot of the jobs being outsourced. A lot of like if you go on these job sites or there's work sites all over the place, and I know that you've heard many complaints about the traffic, about the detours and all that, the signs and everything, those little things that we have to use as barriers and markers. But the thing is that mostly their crews are not even from Lancaster City. So I think that's a major big problem because we're giving the monies to people that live in Mount Joy, Columbia, every area but in our inner city. I'm thinking, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I may need to be corrected, but if we keep those monies in-house, that will save more monies to be able to do different things because they're going to pay taxes within our city, and I just think that would be more fiscally responsible.
All right. Mr. Arroyo.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep hearing as I go canvass in the different neighborhoods is that there's a lack of job opportunities. So one of the things I also hear is that there's a lot of employers outside in our county area that are looking for more employees. So there's a huge disconnect as far as where employers can actually find employees and where employees can find employers. So I think one of the reasons is because of transportation. So one of the things we need to do is improve our transit plan throughout the city to make it more accessible for folks who live in the city to reach these employers outside in the broader county, and make sure that they can come back home and not have to worry about parking and such. So that's improving bus transportation, that's creating more shuttle services that are readily available as well as affordable and accessible to residents throughout the neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on, and I'm going to take your suggestion, Mr. Garcia Molina. This will be directed to you, and we're going to talk a little bit more about housing. Housing is a major issue in Lancaster, and the mayor's administration is taking steps aimed at improving the quality and, of course, the safety of rental properties. But in the meantime, there are many people who are worried about the gentrification of the city and the prospect of long-term residents being forced out of their homes by rapidly increasing rents. So how, as a city council member, can you help to promote a housing market that serves residents of all income levels?
Great. So thank you so much. I think this is one of the big issues that we've been talking about. For us, especially, what has come up time and time again is this idea of affordable housing is two different things. It's how much you get paid, but also the rent. Mm-hmm. And so I think that what we can do is try to find opportunity, whether that's through transportation accessibility, to allow people to access those higher paying jobs if they can't access them here. But also, when we're talking about higher rents, we can't have rent control because of the laws that we currently have. But what we can do is ensure that our landlord-tenant relationships are improving and letting people know that you have an investment on the housing crisis that we have at the moment. And there is a lot of partners out there. There are churches who are buying properties and providing units to the community, and they are becoming landlords that care about the community. And I think there's a lot of people that we have in this city that care to do more of that, of wanting to be empowered to provide affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Schell.
Well, one of the things that when it comes down to housing, is, as the number one thing would be unemployment. This takes me back to when I had my recycling center, and I'm thankful that there was some young people that came to work for me who at that time was living in Garden Court. And this is part of being as well as not just an employer, but also being a caring person in our community. And one of the things that I shared with them, and I said, listen, if you come and work here for a year, I will help you get a home. And today, these young people are owning their home. And so I think that's the main thing, is to try to encourage home ownership, as well as not only that, but if you want to become a landlord, help them and train them how to become a good landlord as well.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
That is huge, especially in our inner city, in our barriers. We have a lot of situations where landlords don't even live here in the city. They live in other states across the country, and they still own properties here. I think that we should have share more dialogue with those landlords, making sure that everything is going well, and also open up and have more meetings to listen to the tenants to make sure that they are upholding their end of the being landlords within our city. What goes on outside, we don't know too much, but what goes on in the inside, I think that we should have more discussion, and in those meetings, they should be opened up to the residents of Lancaster.
All right, thank you. Mr. Arroyo.
Yeah, I think housing is probably the number one issue that we're facing here in Lancaster City. One of the reasons, we're a small town, we're very dense, and there's an incoming of a lot of folks that want to live here. However, one of the things I think we need to do as a city council is work with developers that want to build buildings and build developments for the residents of Lancaster, not for others. So what we want to do, I think, is incentivize them to do development projects where they can actually put a percentage of the sale of proceeds and actually use it towards neighborhood revitalization. So there are other cities throughout the United States where require developers to put a percentage that they, when they purchase a property, some of that money goes towards a fund that can actually go towards facade improvements for current homeowners and renters that already live in that neighborhood, so that way they're not pushed out and can enjoy the benefits of that revitalization.
Thanks. Yeah, we have a housing crisis in our city. I'm not going to mince words, and if we don't take some sort of action, it's not going to improve. It's just going to get worse. And the thing about it is that there's no magic bullet in this case. It is something that is going to take a lot of little things to crack and solve. But for me, there's a lot of different pieces of it. So you have your tenant and landlord relationships. I support the current administration's policy of increasing inspections on landlords that have shown time and time again that they're repeat violators. They're causing unsafe conditions, unhealthy conditions for our people that live here in the city, and I agree that they should be inspected more frequently than those have shown that they can be responsible. I also think that as far as home ownership goes, we have a critical repair program in the city that helps folks that own their homes when they have something happen, like they need a roof repair or their chimney is going to collapse. I would be in support of expanding that critical repair program to things like sidewalk repairs, which is a necessary evil, but often is enough to cause someone who is elderly and maybe on a fixed income to need to leave their home in the city.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to a new question, and this would be, Mr. Schell, I'll pose this to you first. Do you attend city council meetings, and do you do so regularly? And what about those meetings has left a lasting impression on you?
Well, if I must say, I have not attended one in the last year or so. The last time I attended the council meeting, it was a very good turnout. I just, and for that reason, I have not attended one lately.
I am going to follow up at this point. I would register a little bit of surprise that you're running for city council and you have not attended a city council meeting in a year. Why are you running for city council?
Well, I'm running because of the fact that there were 300 citizens came to me and asked me would I run. And the last time I attended the city council meeting, I was disappointed in some of the things that I heard. And also I'm running because of the fact that I know the needs of our community. We do not have no one at the table on our behalf as far as when it comes down to economic development, when it comes down to policing in our community, when it comes down to the housing in our community. And these are things that have been brought to my attention and asked me to run.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes, I attend them as much as I can. Haven't attended a couple recently because I'm mostly out canvassing the area and talking to different residents. But one thing I did see as my time attending the meetings and different meetings across the city is that it's a lack of the voice heard from the inner city and from like we said in the beginning in my opening statement, the have-nots, the ones that usually would not be heard otherwise. Being though I was brought up, raised from all those programs that was provided, every time I attended Lancaster City Council meetings, I never hear nothing about those institutions that have went away or a way to bring them back. So that's my concern, and that's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arroyo?
Yeah, I've regularly attended or attend city council meetings over the past year. Prior to that, I worked very closely with city officials as well as community organizations to really get a pulse of what's happening in the city. But over the past year, I've made it a concentrated effort to attend all of the city council meetings because I do believe it's, you should know what this job entails and what are the issues that are facing in the community. So that's something I've been very intentional about. One, to learn the job, but also know what are the concerns and what's going on in our city today.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bacon?
Easy answer. I've attended every city council and committee meeting for at least the last year and a half, as well as every community meeting that I could possibly go to. For me, what stood out in all of those meetings was the fact that there are actually a growing number of people that come to them, that speak publicly at them, and that tells me that there's a growing number of people in Lancaster City that care. And that's ultimately why I'm doing this. Because it's exciting to see so much civic engagement and to encourage more of that.
Thank you. All right, Mr.
So I do
Garcia-Molina.
attend city council meetings regularly. I think one of the things that I brought up earlier is this idea about inclusivity. Because as a social services provider, our workday is built around people. And so a lot of the meetings that I have to happen in the evenings because families are working during the day. So in those instances, then I have to hope that they have been captured online and in video so that I could watch them later. And so I've been doing it that way. So if I can't attend, then I will follow it up with the minutes or I'll follow it up with watching the online version. But I think that that's an instance that happens to a lot of people that we need to start looking at because a lot of important things happen at city council meetings. It's the budget, it's ordinances that change, and we need to make sure that if it's daycare that's a barrier, we figure out a solution. If it's language, we figure out a solution because that's a space to express your opinion. It's a space to know what's happening next, and it's a space to stand up and say, I don't want this. This needs to not move forward, and I need to make sure that everyone there is able to make it.
Okay, thank you. And I would be remiss if I did not note that right after our forum here this evening, there will be a city council meeting at 7:30. We're only a couple blocks from that site, so it should be easy to get over there.
That's out on time, right?
Yes.
No excuse
Okay,
there.
now this question, first I'll be posing this to you, Mr. Williams. The Lancaster annual budget exceeds about $110 million, and that includes spending in the general fund plus sewer, water, stormwater, solid waste, and recycling. And each year, the council, and particularly in recent years, the council hears the mayor's budget address, reviews the plan at several meetings, and there's a Saturday budget forum typically. And for the past few years, though, the administration budget has been passed as presented without any changes. Do you think City Council exercises effective oversight of city spending? And if not, how would you address that?
I think I really am encouraged, like I heard my fellow candidates say, that they're doing the best that they believe they can do. That being said, me being on city council, once again, I would press, I would make appropriate propositions to see if we can't, spend some of that monies in other areas of our economic development. Not just that, but also in our youth. I think a lot of things like that that we can, and you can't continue to think something's going to get better by continuing to do the same thing over and over again. I think that we should look into new, fresh ideas, and I'm thinking that us here, that's what we're about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arroyo.
Yeah, I think over the last few years, the city council and the city administration has done the best that they can. They are very limited sometimes as to what they can do, but I do believe they can start shifting some of their priorities. And it all goes with the strategic plan. So realizing what is the new strategic plan, which is neighborhoods for the city, I think the budget should reflect that. So if it is neighborhoods, we should start shifting some of those resources that we have in the budget to make sure that the neighborhoods are receiving those resources and the budget reflects that.
Yeah, so last year, the city enacted a tax increase, which I know that no member of city council passed that budget lately in order to do that. It was unbalanced, to say the least, and that was due to years of inequitable development in the city. I think we all understand that, but I do think that they have been effective in being a steward of those funds and steering the ship, so to speak. But there is a case to be made, whereas there is a new strategic plan for the city. It includes building neighborhoods, and I hate to echo what Jamie said, but it is true that budgets do reflect our priorities. So if our priorities have changed, then our budget should change to reflect that. I would also just like to mention that I would applaud the fact that the city put in their budget this year funds for a social worker on the police force. I would increase that. If I were to be on city council, I would say that we would need more than just one to do that, and that's an important part of our budget too, just down to every dollar.
Okay. Mr. Garcia Molina.
I think the conversation around budgets is an important one, and there's a lot of small details that go into it. And I actually took the hours that it took to read the budget line by line, and what I found was that we actually made a mistake, and we had equated 0 to the amount of gas that our police was going to use. So we brought that up, and then that later was amended at the start of the year to fix for that budget that was missed. And so I think that there is opportunities to bring new eyes and new people to the conversation and to who is looking at these budgets, because things like that will happen, but maybe not so much if we include more people with different perspectives. But really, the conversation that's been brought up again and again about priorities is so true. I think even with the climate change plan that was brought forth, really what that's going to call is for a budget that supports our public works department. And I think that we are headed on this direction of making sure that the priorities and the budget align, but we really, again, need to make sure that the right set of eyes are on this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schell.
Well, one of the things that I would do as a council member is really take the budget from a business standpoint and really go through it with the fine detail of it, and making sure that all communities are included in the budget, and that the money is distributed in a way that it will benefit all the city, every resident of the city, to make sure that we have the police force are getting the amount of money they need, the social programs are getting the amount of money they need, the road departments are getting the amount of money they need. That would be one of my main, as a council member, to make sure that looking at the budget from that point of view, that everyone is included in the budget and not just certain area left out.
Okay. Mr. Williams, I'm going to go around one more time on this question as kind of an extension of the question I just asked you. We live in a municipality, or you folks are running for office in a municipality, that certainly in elections, you may, as you put, I think you said, new people, new eyes. However, the new people, new eyes belong exclusively to Democrats. So we have a situation where there is a Democratic City Council, and there has been for several years. We have a Democratic mayor in Lancaster. And I think for probably some citizens that is concerning, because if there is one party in power, 5 of you are running for the nomination and then for 3 seats. So the likelihood is, unless something happens over the summer with the write-in candidacy or something like that, there will be 3 Democrats moving into those seats. What can you say to assure citizens who have concerns about proper transparency, proper checks and balances, proper scrutiny over what happens in city government, that will happen under your watch, even though you're part of the majority party that's running everything? Mr. Williams.
Wow. Only thing I can say is that being a pastor, I was ridiculed, questioned, because how can you be a Democrat and be a man of the cloth and do things this way, you know, just asking those questions like the way you asked it. And I said, look, we're here to serve the community and those that vote us in. If I'm going to get in, it's going to be because the residents of Lancaster City put me there. And why are they going to put me there? Because they expect that I'm going to, be the voice for them while I sit in Lancaster City Council. I have approached Republicans as well as independents alike for their vote. And I said, you could change your party because I'm for you, and that's it.
And just allow me to clarify the question. The question is about this particular municipality where it is democratically controlled. However, we can go outside of the city and find many municipalities that are controlled by the Republican Party, and you would hear maybe the same similar kinds of concerns, and also across the country. So just to make sure that I'm clear on my question.
Yeah, I think when we talk about being inclusive, that means of all people, including if you're across the party lines, right? So what I want to do is just foster a sense of collaboration between not only our municipality, but other municipalities, as well as different parties within Lancaster City. But the one thing that I did notice is as I went to canvass, and if I talk to a Democrat or Republican, we all want the same things. We all want equitable development, right? We all want safe neighborhoods. We all want safe streets. No potholes in our neighborhoods. So we all want these same things. And I think when it comes to getting there, we might differ a little bit. But at the same time, I think when we open our ears and we listen to the community, we're going to do hopefully what's best for them. So,
Ms. Baker.
Yeah, being an elected official, you may have a D or an R after your name, but ultimately you're elected to serve all the people. And I believe that we're all Lancastrians, whether we're citizens, whether we're immigrants, we're new to this country, we lived here for 50 years or 20 years, and you still don't get to call yourself a Lancastrian. That's a very Lancaster thing, by the way. But it is true that, everybody does want very much the same things. They want a good quality of life. They want to maintain it. They want to improve it. And I think that if we're clear about making that our intention, then worries about what party we're from and what party everyone on city council is from will go away, because truly we want to make things better for all people regardless of their party affiliation.
Okay. Mr. Garcia Molina.
As social workers, we don't get to decide who we empower and who's worthy of services. It's something that is a right to everyone. And so I think city council and politics is the same thing. It's who is benefiting from the work that I'm doing, and the answer should be everyone, because we're representatives of the entire city. Just because there aren't Democrats that voted us in doesn't mean that we're not representative of the city itself. So I think even looking at our history, I'm huge into history, and I think that we need to recognize the shoulders of the people we stand on. And whether they're people from my party or not, there were people who came before me that built the city for what it is, and some of those individuals were Republican. And so I think to neglect individuals just because of parties from participating in the process, from being heard, supported, and making sure that our decisions also empower them is an ignorant idea to have around what it means to be a politician.
Mr. Shell.
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm not nominated by the Democratic Party. I was nominated by over 300 citizens of Lancaster City. And for that reason, I even have Republicans, independent, came to me and said, I would love to sign your petition because they know the person that I am. And I'm not a go along to get along. I will speak out for everyone. It doesn't matter what their gender, what their voters registration are, or whether they're independent or Republican. They know that. If you go around, you'll see a lot of my signs are on Republican yards because why? They believe that they know that I'm the right person for the job. For that reason, that's how come I'm not a go along to get along, and I will serve everyone.
Okay, Mr. Arroyo, this first question is for you. Lancaster has unveiled its municipal climate action plan, and it's pledging to cut carbon emissions from city operations by 79% by the year 2025. Do you support this commitment, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Climate action was one of the things I never really paid too much attention to until Hurricane Maria happened. When it devastated the island of Puerto Rico, I had a lot of family members that lost their homes, and Lancaster City itself saw an influx of Puerto Ricans that came here to Lancaster City, looking for housing, looking for jobs, and looking for a new way of life. So I began to take climate action very seriously. So I'm very happy to see that the city has created an action plan to decrease or to improve their operations. However, I think it could go farther. I think we should start looking at the city as a whole and even working with other municipalities throughout the county to make sure that we all have a climate action plan that's working together. But one thing we can't forget is who climate action is affecting. So we want to make sure that neighborhoods aren't being left behind, that people of color aren't being left behind, because these are typically folks that are being left behind when climate action plans are being taken place. So we want to make sure that this is an inclusive process.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bakay.
Yeah, I believe that taking this action is a necessary step. It's really, truly in the best interest of our city to meet these goals and exceed these goals. We have seen the effects of climate change. We've had one of the wettest years on record last year. It was detrimental to our stormwater system, which we know we have issues there that we need to work on. And the climate change is doing us no favors in that regard. So it is in our best interest to act in accordance to this plan to meet those goals. And I would agree that bringing other municipalities on board, whether they are within the county, working together with municipalities of our same size within the state of Pennsylvania, to be on the same page is very important. If you're not rowing in the same direction, where are you going? I do believe that we can be a leader on this, and I would be proud to be a part of a Lancaster that moves forward as a leader on climate change in the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Climate change is something that really hits home, and it's something that Jamie and I can really bond over. And it's the fact that when Hurricane Maria hit, I didn't know what my grandma was like for a couple weeks. And that was a pain that I never want anyone to go through. And as a refugee resettlement case manager, we have climate change refugees. And we see that impact here. We see that impact in the amount of rain that falls. People that can't get out of their house to their jobs because roads are flooded. And I think that the conversation needs to be had around climate change is, how does the city and the community work together? Because what the climate change plan said to us was that the city can do everything they could possibly do, and it's only 4% of the changes that our community needs. The biggest part is the transportation, and that comes to us as a community. So the city needs to make sure that bikers are supported as a community, and that sharing rides is a habit that we developed, and we need to look at how we can work together, because climate change is not a city issue. It benefits everyone, and we need to work together on that.
Okay, Mr. Shell.
Well, I'm a strong supporter of climate change. We had the Hurricane Katrina, we had Hurricane Maria. I had many family members who was caught up in these hurricanes, Katrina, some of them down in Louisiana had to leave their home. Their home was completely destroyed. And so I'm a supporter of climate change because number one is that we need to not only support climate change, but we need to have something in place so that if we get hit with that type of severe weather, what can the citizen, how do the citizens of Lancaster, what kind of shelter do we have in place for them to be able to evacuate to? And so I think that climate change is a huge responsibility. I work out in the weather, and so I see the severe and how the weather is changing, so I'm a supporter of that.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes, just offhand, I was really, truly just blown away because like Jamie, I did not really pay attention to the green, to any meetings. I didn't attend none of them, but I did had the opportunity to recently, I think it was last week, to attend a municipal operations meeting at the Ware Center. And just the information that I had obtained from that meeting, it was so impressive. And it just really made me think, being a contractor, being a plumber, and you keep hearing that over and over again about being green responsible, about making your community cleaner. So that's something with Lancaster City Council that I'm really encouraged that I can play a role in making Lancaster cleaner and making it pro-green.
Okay, thank you. And this will be our last question before the closing statements. We do hear a lot of talk about government transparency, and I think that's been mentioned a little bit here today. Do you think that the city is transparent in the way it conducts the people's business? And are there any changes that you might want to make to the way the city operates to make sure that citizens are aware of the use of their tax dollars as well as how the city government works? So we will start with you on this question, Ms. Baker.
Yeah, I would say that the city is transparent, but it depends on who you ask. There's always things that the city could be doing better to communicate what's going on. We talked a little bit about tonight the barriers to getting to public meetings. It's a wealth of information if you attend them, but there's a lot of different reasons why you may not be able to attend them. So I would support measures such as having increased public meetings during different times of days on hot topics in neighborhoods, conversations, and also talking about the agenda of City Council, possibly even taking City Council on the road and going to different places in the city, not just City Hall. There's nothing that says that we have to have them there. There could be childcare provided at meetings. We've talked about language translation services tonight. So I think that there's always something that you could do to improve transparency, because there's always someone that won't be able to attend, that won't be able to participate, and we need all voices to make sure that we're growing in a way that is that looks like everyone's participating.
All right, thank you.
I think that the city is doing a really great job at that. We just started a new initiative from the city where a lot of the information that they utilize for the reports are actually public information. You can go online and find them. And I know I've been standing up here and saying language inclusivity, but it's really important. When I moved here with my family, I was the English speaker, and I was the one that was forced to interpret it. And when I was in 6th grade, I had to interpret to my dad that he had a brain tumor. And that instance changed the rest of my life. And so it might just seem like language, but that's really important. It has a lot of trickle-down effects. And so we need to make sure that it's a top priority, that the information is available to all the languages that we have in this community. We chose a long time ago to be a community that's welcoming and to decide that we're going to take in refugees. And so we are expanding the languages that we need. And that was our decision, but it is now our responsibility to make that accessible.
Mr. Shell.
Yeah, I think the city is, to some degree, is being transparent as far as much as they are aware of. But I think that because of the fact that we all need someone from the community to help make the city more transparent by bringing these issues to the table. And because as I stated in my opening statement, because I work throughout the city and I know that I see the need in different parts of the city, as a councilman, I would bring that to the table so that the city can be more transparent and look into the things that are needed. And I think that one of the biggest problems that there is not enough communication, there's not enough awareness that are being brought to the table to make the city more transparent in the community.
And Mr. Williams?
Yeah, could you ask that question again?
Yes. It was a question about transparency in government, and that there's a concern. We hear a lot today about the need for government to be open, for it to be accessible to its citizens. And I'm wondering if you feel the city is doing all that it can do, or if it could be doing more.
I think you can always do more because we're not where we want to be. If we were doing everything we could, we would be where we want to be, and there will be no place to reach. So I think that getting with the residents of Lancaster City more often, sharing good, healthy dialogue, not to where it's just, it feels sometimes while attending city council meetings, I have seen where it seems like they're against you know what I mean? Residents against the, the panel and those that are sitting at the seat, the city council and the mayor, and it shouldn't have that feel. It should feel like you're having a family discussion and everybody has something to add. Not everybody's going to be the same, but we can all open up our minds and give opportunity for change.
Thank you. And Mr. Arroyo?
Yeah, I think this administration has done a great job in making steps forward to being more transparent. But while we're more transparent in the outcomes, we could be better or more transparent with the process. And one of the things I like to see city government do a little bit more is more face-to-face town halls, more face-to-face neighborhood meetings, and more face-to-face conversations. The one thing I can say is, while I love social media and technology like the next person, but I have learned so much from just knocking on someone's door and having a face-to-face conversation that I think when it comes to the process, when decisions are being made, if we could do more of that, I think we could include a lot more people in the process and have a lot more engagement in city government decisions.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we are going to stop with the questioning and we're going to go to a 1-minute closing. As I mentioned at the beginning, this time around we're going to go counterclockwise. So Mr. Williams, we will start with you.
Lancaster City is one of the best cities, and I'm not just biased because I grew up here and lived here my whole life, but I really truly believe it. The people and the residents of Lancaster City, the mentors, all of those that helped me to get to where I am today, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the programs. Even though they went away, I promise that I will do everything that I can in my position to be your voice. I'll encourage the youth to continue to participate in local governments and local elections, because next time you could be here.
Thank you. Mr. Schell.
Again, I want to thank Lancaster newspapers for hosting this forum. I want to thank you, Barb. Thank all of you, and I want to thank the 300 residents for signing my petition. As I stated earlier, I've been in the city for over 40 years. I've started businesses in the city, and I want to continue to work for the citizen of the city. I've worked hard over the last 40 years for the citizen of Lancaster, and anyone that has a problem have always came to me, and I want to be that voice for you, not only as just someone in the community, but someone at the table that can help bring the city together and help bring more about police friendliness, help repair roads in the city, and just be a voice for you. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Thank you so much, Barb and LNP, for bringing us together. I think we've all been waiting for this moment. So my name is Xavier Garcia Molina. I'm 24 years old, and I've lived in over 10 houses in this community. I know what it's like to live and struggle in this city, and what I hope that this conversation and my introduction to you all that I've not had a chance to talk to yet is that you know that I will always advocate for you. No matter who you are, it's how I've been trained, it's what I've lived through that has really brought me here today. And so I think that my knowledge and my experiences really will lead me to making sure that city politics is working for us, it's working for the people. So I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Baker.
Thank you so much. Thank you to LNP for hosting this forum. It has been wonderful. I'm Amanda Baker. I'm running for City Council because I love the city. And I think that there are a lot of people that live here that unfortunately don't feel that way. And that has been because there has been a history of inequity in the city, and we need to all work together to make that right. We're making strides. They can't happen fast enough, but we need to continue moving forward. I feel that I'm a hard worker. I know that no matter what happens on May 21st, the next day I'm going to get right back out there and continue serving the city, because that's the type of person I am. And I hope that you will vote for me on May 21st. Thank you.
And Mr. Arroyo.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb and LMP, for the opportunity to talk to our community today. My name is Jamie Arroyo. I grew up here in Lancaster City. I graduated from McCaskey High School and went to Millersville University, all in hopes to live this American dream that I was taught that if you just work hard, you can achieve it. But when I look over the last few decades, people work just as hard, if not even harder than me, and haven't had that same access. So I stayed in Lancaster not because I want to be a city councilman, but because I want to serve you. And I believe this position is to serve the community, and I hope on May 21st you give me that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidates, on behalf of LNP and Lancaster Online, I thank you for participating in tonight's debate. And my thanks to all of you who will seize the opportunity to watch this on Lancaster Online. Please note that a primary election voter's guide that includes this race and those throughout Lancaster County will be featured in tomorrow's LNP and at lancasteronline.com/election. We hope the candidates' answers this evening will help voters to make informed decisions at the polls on Tuesday, May 21st. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. With that, I thank you once more for being with us this evening, and with that, I urge you all now to attend the City Council meeting. Thank you very much.